Hello and welcome back to Mining Stock Daily with me, Paul Harris. Today we're talking about silver in Mexico, and I have great pleasure to be joined by Shawn Howarth, President and CEO of Excellon Resources. Good morning, Shawn.
Good morning, Paul, and thank you for having me.
You're more than welcome, Shawn. We've got a lot to talk about today. You've just announced a transaction to acquire the Negra mine in Mexico. This is a past producing mine, and you can acquire this for $50 million in an all stock deal. Many interesting aspects to this. You've got Orion Resource Partners there. You're also going to get a local partner in Zacatecas called MGrupo. Let's start at the top. How did this deal come about, Shawn?
Oh, it's a great question, Paul. So this started, probably Genesis was around the middle of the summer. We went to site. Orion was looking for a partner to be able to develop the asset and advance it from its current stage. I think kind of what immediately stood out to us with this asset was the potential for a near-term restart ability. So we're looking at a 12 to 18-month timeline, and we'll talk about what that de-risking process really entails. The polymetallic nature of the deposit, focusing on critical mineral exposure, particularly silver, copper, and zinc, and some lead as well. And really, historically, the land package has been underexplored. I think there's significant potential of near mine mineralization, expansion of some of key zones that are currently contemplated to be mined in the PEA, but also looking at mineralization growth at depth and the potential for what we think is a significant skarn narrative and growth project. So for those three reasons, really the restart potential, the polymetallic nature, the ability to advance the resource with exploration, it's kind of key what stood out to us as an outstanding project and an exciting opportunity.
Thank you, Shawn. Now, I think one thing that so far face value separates this from other sort of similar transactions where companies, juniors have acquired historical mines. There's been work on this very, very recently. In the past, the mine was operated by Fresnillo. There's a 2022 preliminary economic assessment that looked at 3 million ounces a year of silver equivalent, including obviously silver, but lead, zinc, and copper in there as well. And there's been quite a bit of recent drilling. So I think the mine was put onto care and maintenance in 2020. So it was operating very, very recently.
Yeah, that's exactly it, Paul. So when we look at this, what's key is assessing what the future plan is, what the PEA numbers were, with really, is this achievable and executable from an operating perspective? And I think, we really honed in on, the time it was operated between 2013 and 2015 under a previous operator, where we saw 2,500 tons per day throughput, which is around the mine throughput that's been contemplated with the PEA. That was achievable. Kind of a silver grade and a grade equivalent basis that's contemplating the PEA was also achieved. And so we look at this as an executable plan. That's number one. And we're referencing that to historicals and actually where it was done before. So that's exactly correct.
Thank you. I want to sort of take a little bit of a digression now before we continue. There's been several transactions over the past 12 months like this of juniors buying previously operated silver mines. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think, first of all, I think silver is an exciting time to be in silver. So we're looking at really capitalizing on what we think could be a fantastic year for silver and being an emerging producer in a rising environment for silver, driven by critical minerals, driven by photovoltaics, is something that really stands out to us and I think stands out for a number of other developers. I think this transaction structure of an all-share transaction is really a sharing of risk where you're allowing someone, a company that's looking for opportunity to advance and develop a project, and you've also partnered with someone that's looking for that focus, that operational focus that might not be either in a larger portfolio or with an operator that's saying, okay, this is small or this doesn't fit my genre. So looking at where can we balance that risk is probably important as well, and I think it's indicative of some of the transactions that have been completed over the last 6 months.
Thank you. I think it also talks to, well, obviously it talks to the geological potential, the continued geological potential of Mexico, but also I think it puts into relief some of the sort of political perceptions about Mexico. That the president, in some ways, is viewed as anti-mining, but the fact that so much investment keeps coming in, so many companies keep coming in to take assets and bring them forward, it suggests that the political risk perception is perhaps not what it seems.
Well, I think you're exactly right, Paul. And Excellon being a past, operator in Mexico, we have a real comfort, working within that jurisdiction, working with the communities and the workforces, and we really pride ourselves in that. And I think that's a competitive advantage that this company, that Excellon, brings to this transaction.
Thank you. I want to dig into that a little bit. As you mentioned, Excellon has been a past producer in Mexico. You've executed on this strategy before. In the past, you acquired the La Platosa mine. That didn't really work out in the end. There's perhaps very specific reasons for that. What's the difference this time?
I think that the highlight between La Platosa and operating and where we brought that, I think it was successful to the point where we delivered, and simply it's not economic given the dewatering rates and the work that was required to continue to operate that. I think where you look at a high level comparison between Platosa and maybe La Negra is really two or three things. Number one, the La Negra mine is very dry mine relative to Platosa. So you don't have the capital that's required for pumping and infrastructure to be able to dewater the mine. And second, La Negra is the ground conditions are very stable. So when we're looking at mining, we're mining at 2,500 tons per day at La Negra contemplated. So it's critical is ensuring turnaround and efficiencies and operational efficiencies so you can maximize that. Versus Platosa was a much lower tonnage but higher grade mine in the context. So those are kind of the key differences. And from my perspective, really is what allows the PEA, the plan at La Negra to stand out is the fact that you do have very suitable mining conditions, and you've operated between Peñoles and previous operators for the last 30 years at that asset. Okay,
thank you. If I remember correctly, at a certain point in time, there were also community issues around what you had at the other project. With this time around, you're going in with two partners. We've talked about Orion Mining Partners, but let's talk a little bit more about the MGrupo, the local partner. Going into this with two strong partners, a financial partner and a local partner, that's got to sort of change things as well.
Well, that's correct. So MGrupo is a Querétaro-based infrastructure company. Its focus is on labor relations, community support, and social responsibility. So I think this is a really interesting partnership because you have Excellon there that delivers the operational know-how. You have Orion that it becomes a long-term strategic partner of Excellon and capital provider, and you have MGrupo that's got that execution capabilities and on-the-ground experiences. Surrounding surrounding the mine at La Negra, you have most of the workforce comes from Maconi, which is a small mining town associated with the mine. Maconi stands out because you have a very strong and supportive and competent workforce that wants to see this mine get restarted. So while we are, fully permitted to restart the mine currently today, we also have a strong supportive workforce that wants to see this restart. And this is something when we did our diligence and around the acquisition, we did a lot of work around MGrupo, meeting the principals there, traveling to Mexico, and saw the passion that they delivered and what they see as a very successful project.
Thank you. And thank you for correcting me about the location. I think at the top I said Zacatecas State, but obviously it's Querétaro State. Okay, so bringing in the partners, that's going to... I first met you, I think it was last year at Beaver Creek maybe, and you were brought on to sort of turn around the fortunes of Excellon Resources. We had quite a sort of good conversation about that. This is obviously a huge step in that direction. In the interim time, you've been sort of cleaning up the company. You sort of got the the number of shares outstanding down to about 38 million shares. Now, obviously, with this transaction, it's an all-share transaction. You're going to do a 10 million capital raise as well. So that's going to increase the shares out to about 130 million, give or take. How are things going on the corporate side?
So great question. So that's right. I mean, what we're looking at is an initial equity payment to Orion and MGrupo of US $20 million. We also look at a US $10 million equity raise that really substantially recapitalizes this business. All that equity is going into the ground. It's going to advance the project. It's not going to refinance other parties. And we also have support of our existing convertible debenture holders. We're going to early convert 25% of the debentures outstanding and extend the maturity of the remaining amount. What that allows us is gives us the financial flexibility to really be successful and execute on this project. All in, it's around 130, right? 130.8 million shares outstanding, kind of forecasted, subject to market prices and everything else. But I think what you're sitting on then with that share base is, an attractive portfolio of projects, a restructured company with long-term strategic and capital providers.
Thank you. Now, some of the other juniors who are executing similar strategies, they, taking the historical asset, and then you mentioned yourself, there's historically been a lack of exploration around La Negra. So is that where you see some potential future gain? First off, see about getting the 300 tons per day operation into operation, and then looking further afield in the area to bring perhaps more mineralization in.
Well, I think, no, that's exactly it. I think the tremendous potential really is around the existing resource, but also, a broader exploration package. So part of the PEA is contemplating around 2 million tons of indicated and 8 million tons of inferred. Those are that's a tonnage basis that's being mined. I think there's significant amount more potential tonnage to be discovered, particularly in certain zones where they've been under drilled or underexplored, and they're part of our inferred mineralization. So the next 12 to 18 months is focusing on not just an infill drill program that de-risks the mine plan, but also looking at ways to expand zones of adjacent mineralization, open along strike. It's not structurally constrained, and also looking at targeting a larger skarn potential at depth, and structure analyses as to why we think this is executable.
Okay, thank you, Shawn. In closing, aside from completing the transaction, what are going to be the sort of main goals and things you want to execute this year?
Yeah, so great question. So over the next 12 months, the focus really be on I'd say 4 high-level things, that branch out from there. First off is looking at the detailed engineering and design for the restart plan, particularly around a tailings filtration facility, looking at filtered tailings deposition versus historically was hydraulic tailings at the project, doing an infill drill program for that de-risks the first 3 years of the mine production. Based on that drilling, updating the resource model, looking at a mine plan and equipment review as well, a successful startup, and finally process analyses, met test work as well. So that'll be the key on the restart, and then overlay that with basically the exploration, looking to convert inferred mineralization to indicated, also expanding existing inferred mineralized resources.
Well, thank you. Well, the metals have started 2023 off very well, so the timing seems to be impeccable. Congratulations there, Shawn. Excellon Resources trades on the TSX and the NYSE under EXN. Shawn Howarth, President and CEO, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Paul.
And that's all from me, Paul Harris. Join us for more from Mining Stock Daily soon.